By the name of Joe Jarzombek with Synopsys, and we're going to talk to him about his speaking engagement here and about his company. So welcome.
I appreciate being here, the opportunity.
So how do you like the summit so far?
It's been great. I've been here multiple years. I spoke here many years, and so that's always been a good community to come back to. It's
awesome.
a good, diverse community focused on cybersecurity.
Okay, so what was the topic you talked about today or yesterday?
Software supply chain.
So software, supply chain, risk management.
Yeah,
So good
really
stuff.
Great stuff.
So tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about what that is.
Okay, we look at it from a fundamental perspective that today we hear a lot about cyber exploits, and everybody's always looking at the bad guys and seeing why is it being exploited, when the fundamental cause for all the breaches, when you look at it, has been software. It's been the exploitable nature of software, and most people feel like they're victims, like they can't do anything about it.
A victim mentality.
It is, but fundamentally, these breaches, the root causes, are in things that we can discover. They're known vulnerabilities, CVEs. They're exploitable weaknesses, CWEs. Mm-hmm. And I'm using a term here that people say, well, what's that? These are actually standards. They were sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security.
Right.
Department of Defense is one of the largest users of these. And who uses it? It's tools. So that tools can talk about and discover vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and they actually have associated mitigations. I think something that's most entertaining is when we hear people coming out saying, oh, I've been victimized as another zero-day exploit. When is all they're doing is publicly admitting that somebody else is more committed to finding their exploitable weaknesses.
That's a good way to look at it.
These exploitable weaknesses are 100% discoverable. 2/3 of them are at the code level. Literally, using static code analyzers, you can pick that up. So yes, that means the other third are at the architecture and design, which means people have to look for that, but we still know how to look for those things. But the worst case is all these known vulnerabilities. We hear about WannaCry. It's just, again, the patch was publicly available. It's been out there, and people didn't patch. It's like, really, it's not the ingenuity of the attackers. It's the fundamental vulnerability or apathy of the attack victims. And that's just the nature of where we're at today. We've got to do the basics. And so software supply chain risk management is really focused on understanding what are you bringing into your enterprise. Right. And there's different levels that you do that. Because today, the majority of software is assembled. We bring in components, third-party components. Could be open source, it could be commercial off the shelf, but these third-party components, people don't test before they incorporate it into their next build. We're seeing a lot of new software coming out with old vulnerabilities in it. The patch was available, but the developer chose not to use the patch version, and they just passed that on. Why is that happening? It's because the using side is not checking it. We actually have sample procurement language that people can use. It says we demand that certain things are in there that you can look for that, and that you also demand the right to be able to test it or have independent third-party testing. We've been working with Underwriters Labs with the stand-up of their cybersecurity assurance program for independent testing and certification of network connectable devices. It's all focused on the software of those. And so we can do things about it, and when you don't think you have the internal capabilities within a company or an enterprise, you can turn to others to do that for you. But you know what? You have to want to do it.
Right. It has to start from within.
Yeah,
right?
It absolutely does.
Awesome. Very, very innovative stuff. Real cool stuff. And I have a question for you. So let's say you have a dev test environment and a production environment within an enterprise, right?
Yep.
And how much are you seeing, not necessarily bringing in vulnerable software, but having like an old version of CentOS or Red Hat Enterprise Linux, right, with an old version of Java on it sitting dormant within the enterprise, and then a developer running code on that? How often are you seeing that vice bringing in old or software built on them?
I don't have percentages to say. It happens. If there's a scenario, you'll say, well, that ends up happening somewhere. Mm-hmm. The pervasiveness of any one of those, I wouldn't have a good measure of that.
But it's a considerable attack surface if
it
you
is.
have any of that there.
And that's the challenge, is that we are actually, and a lot of the talks here have been about IoT. That was part of mine as well. The Internet of Things is basically increasing our attack surface more and more, and it's fundamentally putting us more at risk. Great opportunities coming along, but it's also more risk exposures associated with it. Right. So again, we can take action because this is part of our supply chain activities. Right. And people have to, so these are all external dependencies. We depend on others for products and services. and that in terms of software and hardware. But what are we doing to check it?
Right, so
Somebody needs to be on our enterprise side.
that's doing the evaluation. So it's not necessarily the initial acquisition of a particular piece of software or hardware, but the operation and maintenance piece as well.
It is.
The ongoing
There
effort.
is both. DevOps becomes a very important part of this. And there's actually capabilities set up in different organizations because we have to appreciate the fact that many organizations don't have the wherewithal to do that. So bigger organizations, and I came out of the Department of Homeland Security as my last, and there was actually an enterprise service. It's called Car Wash, where they would actually say, before any individual agency accepts or brings in new software, we're going to test it here. And then the Car Wash program not only did the independent testing, they would do lifecycle support. So again, let
So
each
you got the
agency.
wash and wax.
Yeah,
They have they have the resources.
I like that.
But
The
again,
detail.
you've consolidated the right resources, the people who know how to test, and then you also bring the right tools with them. There are no Uber tools in this space, so you have to bring a toolkit to be able to check out these things for known vulnerabilities, exploitable weaknesses, and malware. Check it out before you actually install it.
Right. Very, very good.
So-
very good tips.
Yeah. So Joe, before you go, tell us a little about the company Synopsys.
So Synopsys, a lot of people know them because we're number one globally for electronic design automation, and number two in the area of semiconductor IP. All of this is implemented in software, and the company realized that by bringing in these different security tools, Coverity was the first one, it actually increased the value of what they were doing. And in 2014, they bought Coverity as the company. Then they started buying other companies. 2015, Kodamicon, they've been assembling the best of breed tools of bringing this together, and so we're integrating it together on a single platform. Individual tools are still available, but the value is the integration of these tools, where you do fuzzing, where you do software composition analysis, you do static code analysis. Doing that together brings you much better insight. It's a comprehensive insight about what is your risk exposure and what you can actually do to mitigate that. But we also realize that a lot of organizations, when they say these are great tools, but we just don't have the right people to do that. And so we have now rolled out managed services and professional services, so both in terms of training, but if you actually need somebody to run it for you, we can do that too. So it's an end-to-end solution of helping people fundamentally reduce their risk exposure from anything that's attributable to software.
Awesome. Great stuff. You have anything else, Nick?
No, just thanks for coming
Yeah,
on and
I
telling
appreciate
us
the
about
opportunity.
everything here.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for staying in sync with
InfoSecSync.
InfoSecSync.
Thanks.